Hello, this is the Landscape Ontario podcast. I am Scott Barber. Today we are talking about the Canadian Landscape Standard. This was a document created in partnership between the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects and the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association. It is designed to be the single authoritative resource for landscape construction projects across the country. To discuss why the CLS is important, I'm joined by Christene Stenhouse Levatte. Christene is a landscape designer based in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. She's been involved with the CNLA for many years, including as a past president. She's part of the steering committee for the CLS, and she's going to talk about why it's a document that should be on every landscape professional's desk or computer across the country. And we're also going to talk about the second edition, What's New, and that's coming out in March 2020, so this month. Hope you enjoy it. It's coming up next. The Landscape Ontario podcast is sponsored by Dynascape Software. LO members save 15% on Dynascape products, software upgrades, and online training. Visit dynascape.com for details. All right, Christene, thank you so much for joining us. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your experience and some of your roles at the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association?
Sure. So I'm a landscape contractor, design-build contractor mostly here in Cape Breton. So I'm part of a family business. My brother David Stenhouse and I run this company that my parents started. Been in the industry for banging on 30 years.
Not to date yourself.
That's right. So I am a certified landscape designer and a certified landscape manager, and I have a BBA, and I'm also a lead green associate. And for the CNLA, my God, the list is long. I started at Landscape Nova Scotia, and so went through the ranks there, and I'm a CNLA past president, and I'm the current chair of the Canadian Landscape Standard CNLA Joint Committee, and that was started in September of 2014. And also incoming chair for the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association's Government Relations Committee, and I also sit on the HVCRT Climate Change and Environment Working Group. So, yeah, that's what I do.
Just a few hats.
Just a few, yeah.
Just a few, and sometimes the host of the national awards, as I know well.
Oh my gosh!
In that a couple of years ago, out in in the Maritimes, maybe it's not Maritimes, out in New Brunswick, anyways.
Yes, that's funny. They usually roll Harold Deanan and I out to host these awards. Yeah, it's good. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to talk about the Canadian Landscape Standard, as you mentioned, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about what it is and why it was developed a few years ago.
Sure. So what it is, it's basically an industry tool. It sets the national guidelines and best practices for all the major aspects of the landscape horticulture industry. So it pretty much covers the value chain. So everything from landscape designers, landscape architects, landscape contractors, maintenance firms, right into retail garden centers, the growers, and all the hardscape. And so basically all the aspects of landscape horticulture, from design through to implementation and maintenance.
Mm-hmm. So everything, the whole kit and caboodle. And can you tell us a little bit about how it was developed? It sounds like it's pretty comprehensive. What was that process like?
Actually, it's a really great story. So the original, we adapted from the British Columbia Landscape Standard, which I believe was started sometime in the 80s. So when that BC Landscape Standard was in its 8th edition, which was 2012, if I'm not mistaken, the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects and the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association approached the BC SLA and the BC LNA to ask if we could potentially take the BC Landscape Standard nationally. And so after several meetings and discussing the best way to do this, we signed an MOU with them in 2015. So the two British Columbia associations and the two national associations all signed, and we operate under that MOU today. So a definite collaborative effort. So the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects and the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association came together in a joint committee. And we populated that committee with representatives from basically across the country. We represent 4 regions, basically, so British Columbia, the Western Canada, Central Canada, and Atlantic Canada. And this year, in this second edition review, we had input from the Northwest Territories Association of Landscape Architects.
Very cool.
I know.
And it's pretty neat that the architect, the Society of Landscape Architects and the Nursery and Landscape Association, Canadian Nursery Landscape Association, were able to work together to make this happen. That's a pretty cool element of it as well.
Do you know what it really is? And working with the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects, and in particular Michelle Legault, who's the executive director, has just been just an amazing experience. And we just work so well together. And, as a committee, and in order to get this standard out on the ground, I mean, we recruit from across the country, industry volunteers, subject matter experts, allied associations, everybody comes together to do the content review and the verification. So basically, if you wanted to boil it down to its simplest terms, you have, the landscape architects and the landscape designers who are designing and speccing and pulling together these tender packages across the country. And then, and then you have the CNLA, their members, building and maintaining and growing all this amazing product and selling it to the consumers. And so it's a real connection of the value chain, like right across the nursery, the landscape horticulture industry. So yeah, we're very, very grateful for the relationship, and it's good. It's good.
So how do you find how do you bring together all the different subject matter experts? Was it a committee that was sort of out recruiting, looking for people? How did that process transpire?
Well, there's two amazing paths for this recruitment and this engagement. Engagement is probably a better idea,
Sure.
because this is this is a labor of love. It really is. People are so passionate about what they do, and so willing to share. So the two pathways. First of all, the CSLA and the CNLA are both kind of a federation model. So we have provincial. The CSLA calls theirs components, and ours are called provincial associations. So through that network, we have people on the ground in all these regions that we can draw from. And then the second thing is we have the most amazing contractor who oversees the production of the Canadian Landscape Standard, the first edition and the second edition. And that gal's name is Sally Harvey and her team, and she's based in Ontario and a very active member of Landscape Ontario. So between these two amazing forces, we managed to get this done.
Yeah, it was quite an undertaking. So I guess it started in 2014-ish that this plan, I guess this idea came out, and then when was it finally the first and then I guess the second edition? When were they published?
So we hit the ground with the first publication of the National Standard, March 2016. And then we spent pretty much all of 2019, reviewing, revising, editing. We've actually, the second edition is going to look a lot different from the first edition. But yeah, so we spent 2019 doing the review for the second edition, and we will launch in a few weeks. The end of April, the first week of March is our goal for launching.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going to be different about this next edition?
Yeah, so there's quite a few things. How much time do you have? No, I'm kidding. So first of all, the biggest change to this standard is that we've gone to a subscription model. So, originally we started and we produced it in 2016, and then we were going to, let it live for 2 or 3 years, and then we were going to, in the last year of that particular edition, then we were going to review it. But it is a huge piece of business. And not only that, it doesn't allow us to be nimble and flexible. So the subscription model, the way it goes is as soon as this second standard is launched, this committee will dive right back into what we know needs improvement. Like, it cannot be done all at once. It's a living document, and in order to be a living document, it has to go out under a subscription model. We have to be able to, like, hey, this needs changing, or a member called and said, you might want to update this. So in order to be engaging and flexible and nimble and living, this is how it has to go. So as revisions, amendments, additions are generated out of the committee, they will go right out to the subscription holders. Like, it's going to be much, much better, because this industry is just changing so quickly, with innovation and research and development and product, and so yeah.
Sure. So does that mean? How does that mean? Is it a printed, book? Is it a digital copy that can be updated? How does that work when you say a subscription model?
We actually have two versions. So we have a digital model available, and we also have a hard copy, which is in the form of a binder. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So people have a choice, and our members, all the members of the CSLA and the CNLA, will receive a digital subscription as a member benefit, and that's going to be including students. So that's new for this year. We're pretty excited about that.
Now, why should a member of the CSLA or the CNLA, why should they look into this, and how can it help them in their careers and their businesses?
Well, the mandate, the vision, the goal of the Landscape Standard Committee was to have a copy of this standard on the desk of every landscape professional across the country, no matter where they sat in the value chain. Because at the end of the day, you cannot, or you should not, operate your business without a set of best practices, on your desk. So this is why we're also including the students in the subscription model as a member benefit. So if a student is a member of their provincial association, whether they're taking a landscape architecture degree or they're taking a landscape horticulture diploma, they need to understand from the get-go that there is a national set of standards, best practices available to them. And so it kind of grows up with them, and it becomes ingrained, so that down the road in their careers, whether they're running a business or working for a municipality or they have their own firm, then this is ingrained. This is ingrained in their education and in their business processes and everything that they do through the day. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Now, what about municipalities and governments? Is this something? Has there been? What's their reception been like in terms of, when a municipality, for example, might be, tendering and so forth? Is this something that is a goal of the CNLA and the CSLA to get it in the hands of, people that make those kinds of decisions?
It really is, and people who have used the standard, within municipalities or within government, it doesn't take them very long to realize and understand the benefit and how it can work for them. This standard, this second edition standard, is all about landscape performance, because, really when you think about it, Scott, it's the landscape industry's time. Like, we're dealing with climate change on a global scale, and people are looking to natural solutions and built landscape solutions to address things like, our temperature issues, our air quality, our water quality, our standard of living, our well-being, our mental health, our physical health. So really, it is this industry's time to shine. Like, we have to step up with the product and service that really contributes to the overall health of the planet and the people that live on the planet. So at the end, when you take it back to its very basic principle, if a landscape doesn't perform, if it doesn't grow, and if your trees don't get bigger and your grass on your lawn doesn't live, then it's not doing anything for us. It's not working. So, a living landscape and a healthy landscape is a performing landscape. So it's almost like all these issues, and all the problem-solving abilities sort of concentrated on the plant. So the best practices and standards are so important right now. So again, with the new format and the new content that we put into the standard, we are, beginning to really address and really position ourselves in how our product and service, can help adapt landscapes, can mitigate climate change issues, can help provide resilient landscapes. And so all these principles from the Canadian Landscape, from the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association, and from the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects, all the political positions and the positions on climate change, all are kind of focusing in on this standard, and so we're supporting the positions of both associations. So I can tell you a little bit about what's new, if you like.
Please do. Yeah, I'd love to hear.
So we reorganized the table of contents. So we put it into a logical order of operations. We combined some sections, and we added a critical task list, which really will help people see the order of operations and when you're planning a landscape project from beginning to end, and wherever you would fall in that order. I talked a little bit about how we went out to allied associations and went to the experts and got their input on it. So the Interlocking Concrete Paver Institute was really helpful on the hardscape standards. So
Sure.
We got an awful lot of input from them. We also pulled in as an appendix the National Voluntary Code of Conduct for Ornamental Horticulture Industry. So that's a collaboration that was done at a federal level, and it addresses invasive species. Landscape Ontario produced this amazing document called the Ontario Landscape Tree Planting Guide. So we've referenced that. We have offered up some snow and ice operations risk management guidelines for people who do snow and ice in the winter. We consulted with the Northwest Territories Associations on cold climate factors, and we've introduced the basic principles of landscape commissioning. So we're very excited about the new additions. We've also put in a page on our position on climate change, and and there's a new font, which is beautiful, and new colors and a new cover.
Fantastic. Hey, a couple of those topics we actually did. We recently did podcast episodes on in terms of some of the snow and ice, risk management stuff that we did recently, and then also had Darby on for the Ontario Tree Guide. So that's a neat connection there. And for any listeners that want to check that out, we have a couple episodes that touch on those things.
Yeah, I've spoken to Darby, but I've never met her. And one of these days, we're going to have lunch. The next time it lines up for us.
Fantastic. Actually, she was here at the LO office today for the grounds management lecture series. So That's funny. And you, of course, I don't think we mentioned it before, are out on the East Coast. And maybe you did mention it when you were talking about your business. But for our listeners, there you go. So we're on the line here, two different parts of the country, but I guess that's fitting because this document, this standard, really is a national effort. It's amazing how many passionate people put their time and expertise into to making it to come to fruition.
Do you know what? And it's so true, and it's funny because in the original edition we had listed everybody that had contributed. And so in this edition, the committee got together and said, there are so many people. There's no way you're not going to miss somebody. So we wrote. Actually, Mike Mills from the BCLNA wrote a beautiful acknowledgement piece that we put in, just generally just thanking everybody. I mean, it's just been an amazing. And it's just a privilege to work on it truly and meet everybody and get everybody's perspectives. So. So yeah.
Why has it been important to you? Obviously, a lot of time. You put in a lot of time, just like many others have as well. What is it that that made you interested in being a part of it?
Do I just grew up in this industry, and my mother's side, my mother's German, and so her people go back, I think it's 3 or 4 generations of growing, like nursery growing. And then I grew up in a household where my grandfather was one of the original founders of the Atlantic Association of Landscape Trades, and then my father was president. And so I don't know, it's just one of those things that I just assumed I would do. And you know what? I enjoy it. I just love these people. It's been great. It's just, and let's look at it from like a self-serving point of view. I mean, really. And I always tell people who are, they get asked if they want to work on a committee or serve on a board, and I say, look, you can go to all the universities in the world, but there's nothing quite like being involved in a collective of like-minded people. Like, I have a whole network. We all do. Like, if I have a question, I can reach out to somebody in BC, I can reach out to somebody in Ontario, and I do all the time.
Sure.
So for business, particularly, we're in Cape Breton. Like, we are at the end of the earth. We're small. We don't have a huge population, so it's been good. I continually encourage people to join and participate. So.
And as a last thing, where can people find how can people get the standard?
Well, in about 2 weeks, because right now the portal, you can't buy anything off the portal because we're obviously transitioning. But if you go to www.csla-aapc.ca/standard, that is where the central portal for purchasing is.
Perfect, and that should be with mid March. Do you think? Did you mention when roughly you think that might be?
I'm going to say the first week of March. That should be good to go.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure to put a link in the description here, the podcast description for people to make it easy. I hope they do go check it out and that they can get some value from it because there's such great stuff there. And as you said, it's been a labor of love of so many different experts from across the country. And it sounds like the second edition has just added some really great stuff as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk about what it's all about and to share some of your experiences. And like I said, hope people go check it out.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Landscape Ontario podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, we hope you'll subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to get new episodes every month. And if you have an idea for the show, please email me at scott@landscapeontario.com. Thanks for listening.